So Malcolm X once told us, our people not only have to be re-educated to the importance of supporting Black businesses, but the Black man himself must be made aware of the importance of going into business. Now, I discovered this quote right before I began my journey into the entrepreneurial world, and it completely stopped me in my tracks. I felt like he was speaking to me. Now, that was the motivation I had needed to move forward and support as many Black businesses as I could and help others do the same. So I spent so many hours searching the internet in hopes of finding the history of Black-owned businesses in the current state. And that was when I learned that we've had the keys all along and the $1.1 trillion buying power to create a powerhouse Black community. But my biggest revelation was that supporting Black businesses was not enough. Now, just so you understand where I'm coming from, I want you to imagine that $10 bill in your pocket or in your wallet right now. Now, in 6 hours, that will have disappeared. Now, this happens every 6 hours in the Black community, where our money rotates and circulates for only 6 hours before it leaves and enters someone else's community. Now, just so you have a frame of reference, I want you to consider this. In Asian communities, their money circulates for a month. In Jewish communities, it circulates for 20 days. In the Black community, it circulates for only 6 hours. Now, in order for us to build this community, we have to hold on to those dollars for as long as possible to create more long-term wealth. Now, through my research, I've learned that supporting Black businesses isn't the only step that we must take. I've learned there are 3 different components. 1, of course, supporting Black businesses. 2, creating more Black entrepreneurs in our communities and more of a wealth and broader spectrum of businesses. And 3, creatively sharing our resources. Now, since it's Black History Month, I feel like it's only fitting that we look back at some successful Black communities to see how they've done it and completed all 3 of those components successfully. Because the best way for us to prepare for our future is to learn from our past. Now, in 2012, I began doing research on different Black-owned businesses. And through that research, I discovered my most favorite part of history, which is known as Black Wall Street, of course. Now, this community was located in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Now, what made this community so special was because they had this broad spectrum of Black-owned businesses. Everything in their community was Black-owned. They had Black-owned pharmacies, nightclubs, movie theaters, anything you can imagine, they had it. So they had no reason to step outside of that community and purchase anything else. So their money continuously rotated and circulated within that community, making them extremely prosperous. Now, one of the biggest issues I've seen within our community is that we don't necessarily have that broad range of businesses today. Now, in many communities, it's difficult, if not impossible, to find Black-owned grocery stores or even Black-owned pharmacies. So those dollars immediately run out of our community. Now, as I said before, in order for us to build, we have to make sure that we foster that entrepreneurial mindset in ourselves and even in our kids. Because I truly believe, and I want you to quote me on this, that each and every one of us should be an entrepreneur in some capacity. Regardless of what your full-time position is, whether that means that you're learning the ropes from there and then you're applying that to your own business, or if you're taking your passion and your hobby and turning that into a side business, it is all necessary. 1, to contribute to your own legacy and your own family, generations down the line, and 2, to contribute to the Black community in general. Now, another community that did a really good job at one of those components is in Boston, Massachusetts. So how do we create those businesses successfully? Well, that leads to the next component, sharing our resources. Now, in Boston, Massachusetts, in 1900, Booker T. Washington founded an organization known as the National Negro Business League. Now, the whole aim of this business, or this organization, was to help African Americans create businesses and make a profit. So you had these successful entrepreneurs, these aspiring entrepreneurs and professionals who got together and they basically networked and shared their resources and their stories about their successes and their failures so that other people can learn from what they did. Now, one of the biggest things that I've learned is that it's not that we don't have the ambition and the passion to do this, it's just that we don't have the knowledge necessarily. But the good news is that there are many of us who have gone down that road. So what I would say is don't be afraid to share that information. If you know how to form an LLC or get a trademark or logo, trademarks, that is some information that a lot of business owners or aspiring owners don't have. I know because I was one of them a couple years ago. So never be afraid to share that information. And this also applies to the professional and academic world. Wherever you are today, I guarantee you that there is someone who is one step behind you, or 10 steps, who is wondering how they can get to where you are today. So never hesitate to share that information and lift as you climb. Speaking of lifting as you climb, that is exactly what another group of women did in Detroit, Michigan in the 1930s. And I actually just learned about this story a couple weeks ago. So in Detroit, Michigan, in this Black community, there were a lot of different businesses there that were not Black-owned. These businesses would gladly take their money, but they would not hire them. So these women were fed up. And they said, well, look, if you're not going to hire us, we will not be spending our dollars here. And so they organized with other women in that community and taught each other about their buying power. And they made it their business to go around and support Black-owned businesses only. Now, these women were such a force to be reckoned with, that they went on to encourage 10,000 women all around the country to do the same, supporting Black-owned businesses, boycotting businesses that were not supporting their communities. Now, they also went into major negotiations with major corporations as well. And throughout those years, they had created 75,000 jobs for African Americans, pure Black girl magic. Now, as you can see with a lot of these stories, we've had the keys all along, almost 100 years ago, to get this done. But what really amazed me about these stories is the fact that we are still fighting the same battles 100 years later. So almost 100 years ago, we were still saying, buy Black, support Black businesses. And here we are today saying the same thing. Which is why I say it's important that we learn from our past so we can prepare for our future, so that we don't repeat it again. So with that said, I challenge you all, once you leave here, to figure out how you will contribute to each of those three components. What type of business will you move forward to create to benefit yourself, your family, your legacy, and the Black community? What businesses will you move on to support? And how will you use your resources to create or to help someone else, to mentor someone, to be a mentee, and make sure that you're using your resources to give back to the community to help someone else? From our history, I've learned that we've definitely done this before, and we've done it when we've had less rights and less resources than we have today. So if we were able to do it back then, there is nothing stopping us from doing it today. So why not now? Thank you.